You know what is super trippy to me? And it's something that I never would have believed when I was a little kid. And of all the things the Lord has allowed me to do in my life, one of my favorites is sit around in my pajamas and just look how I look. This is fantastic, by the way. And to think that when I was a little girl, I thought that authors were made up. I thought that journalists just dropped out of the sky. I thought that pulpits were only for men, and I thought that my radio days were behind me. Like, there's a lot of things back in the day. And if you know anything about my story, the Lord has been really good to me, even though my life has been a lifetime movie. The Lord's been so gracious to me to allow me to do things that many people just dream of, and I'm so grateful, and He's always got all the glory for that. I got a call today, and one of my students said, "I'm listening to you on my Alexa." And I just thought about that a minute, and I've got to do so many things in life that sometimes I forget how cool that is. That right now, if you ask her to play the Misfit Pastor podcast, you'd just hear my voice for a couple hours, which is crazy. And you know what it made me think of? Because I'm weird, it immediately takes me to the last words of Moses. And Moses was a great leader. Moses took a long time to get confident, and Moses really cared about the people. The people didn't always care about Moses, but that didn't really ever stop Moses. And people's last words have always fascinated me. Steve Jobs said, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." And when we go to the Bible, one of the last things that Moses ever says as he addresses the nation and reminds them of who God is, you know, be of good courage, be of good cheer. The Lord is with you, and He goes wherever you go. And I love that about Moses. I love that even in the finality of not making it over the hump to the promised land, He says, "You shall love your God, your Lord, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, and these words that I command you shall be on your heart." Deuteronomy is not a very actionable book. It's honestly I think the Hebrew translates to the words of Moses. And Moses is kind of a chill dude. Even though he split seas, and even though he prophesied plagues, and even though he warned Pharaoh, and even though he was this beautiful leader and prophet of his time, I think that it's so selfless of him to take these final days of not going into the promise to set them up to succeed. And that's a true leader right there. And I think about how many of us can say that we've led the kind of life where when our time on earth is through, we don't have anything left to say. But don't forget, don't forget that the Lord is with you wherever you go. And don't forget that He's leading you to the land of milk and honey. And don't forget, write this law on your hearts. Don't forget when He led us through the desert. Don't forget. And maybe you feel like you don't get a lot of things right. Or maybe you feel like, well, I don't really have a life where the Lord's allowed me to do those things. But at the same time, think about the things that He has allowed you to do, and I bet you they're way cooler and bigger than you think of. You know how much I would give to be able to have way more time with my kids and less time running a big old ministry? A lot. Do I put them first? Absolutely. Do I put God first and my kids first? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I would still take all of their time if they would give it to me. And if the Lord didn't have me doing something, I would definitely try to find 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 more hours a day that I could just devote totally to them. But that's not the world that I live in. It's just the world that I get to be inside, and I get to spend time with my kids, and I get to do what I'm called to do, and it all just wraps itself up in a bow. But some days I just assume embroider a pillow, lay in the bed, call all my kids to come and gather around the TV and watch 8 old movies, and that's a ministry. I think that's probably a greater ministry than I could ever have. And I got that when my children were younger. I had the ability to do that. And I just wanted to remind you today that it's not what you think it's about. I get a lot of questions from people like, well, Brooke, how do you make it to whatever this thing is? Or, Brooke, how did you blah, blah, blah? I don't know. That's always my answer. And once you get to wherever you think this is, I don't even know where that would be, you always come away going, it ain't even about that. I think people are interesting. They're like, you should start a mega church, or you should, and I just sit back and I'm like, I don't think I will. I think I'm just going to sit here. And I think I'm just going to do what he told me to do. I think that people mean that well-meaning, like they love you and they want to see more of you. But what Moses was saying is, you don't really need me. And don't forget what we went through. And don't forget that at the end of the day, the Lord's got your back, always has, always will, and don't forsake him. That's what you need to know before he went out. Is, you know what? Promise me that you'll trust God and you'll obey him. You'll believe that he's for you. So maybe you don't feel like your life has led up to some great climactic space. That's okay. I've lived such a wild, crazy life of traumatic things that I think your life sounds pretty sweet to me. And if you think it's boring, I'd like to know what boring is sometimes. But I think that we're all where we're meant to be. And I think that the Lord always orders our steps and goes before us. And you may not always be here. But I would hope that when you reach a space where you're able to address the people, and it's why my spiritual father always said, you always preach like it's the first time and the last time, every time, and you always leave a little blood on the altar, because one day it will be. I never forgot that. And you know what? It's left me with a life of no regrets in ministry. I have regrets about some things in life, but I don't have regrets about ministry. I know what I was told to do. I did it to the fullness that I could at the time. And that helps you sleep at night. There's something about going, that's all I was supposed to do today, and that's enough. And it don't matter who don't like you, and it don't matter who's mad at you, and it don't matter who come to complain to you. It really doesn't matter. Because what people don't really understand is that when you're wrapped up in God to the degree that Moses was, it really don't matter what anybody says, and it really don't matter what people think you ought to be doing, and it really don't. Your life will be what the Lord intended for it to be, and that's all that you need to know. You've been looking for a sign, right? For the door, right? Lord, I'm going to tell one of y'all, Lord, shut every door that's not for me and open all the ones that are from you. And that's not a bad prayer. But sometimes it's desperate. Nothing wrong with that prayer at all. I've prayed it many times myself. But here's the thing, is that the Lord orders your steps. And do you really think, as somebody that has never felt like I got my own choices, that's fine because I make dumb choices, do you really think that God is not writing a suspenseful, beautiful book with your life? Because I believe he is. And you don't have to have a screen or a platform or a pulpit or some great affluent name or what have you or whatnot or whoever you look up to. You don't need that. You just need a heart like Moses to be able to leave behind what really matters. And it's, do you love God? And do you know that following him is going to make sure you're okay even after I'm not here? That, my friend, is a leader. That, my friend's a man that turned his back on everything but what God said. I'm always proud to tell the story of Moses. And sometimes I wonder what our last words will be. And I would love to think that they might be something like this. I hope that they will be. I'm sure that they will.